Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. Erin Merryn,
Nice to meet you.
welcome to the podcast. It's really exciting to have you here. I know that you went through a lot to get here today, so I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank you for just your commitment. And I think anybody that tunes in today is going to learn a ton and spread a lot of important message. So thank you for that. And there'll be a lot more to thank you for by the time we're done. But you know, I started this podcast. I'll read you sort of the mission statement, which is to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. Now, those organizations may be for-profit, nonprofit, and we've had a mix of a bunch of different great people that have been guests on the podcast. But you get the idea that we could all learn from one another.
Yeah.
And share parts of our stories that may inspire others and so on and so forth. So I'm in that spirit grateful for you to be here. Among other great things, you are the founder of Erin's Law, and we're gonna double click on all that. You're lobbying every state in the United States to pass this law, which requires all public schools in the state to implement a prevention-oriented child sexual abuse program.
Yep.
So much there. So why don't we just dive right into it? Tell me about your journey.
Yeah.
Start as early as you want.
Yep.
In that, and then let's take it from there all the way up to where things stand today.
Yeah. So growing up here in the suburbs of Chicago, I ended up meeting my best friend in kindergarten, and like many kids, that's when you start experiencing your first overnights.
Yep.
And it was at her house that I had my first overnight. Her life was a little different than mine. Her dad wasn't in the picture, but she had an uncle that lived with her. Mom worked, he watched her during the day. And so anytime I was over there, it was just the uncle and her little brother. Well, it was at her house, first time overnight, that I woke up in the middle of the night to her uncle coming in and sexually abusing me. Telling me, don't tell anyone, keep it a secret. I hadn't been educated. You don't keep this secret, you'll be believed. So I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my best friend. I didn't tell my parents, teacher, no one. But of course, I was terrified to spend the night at her house again when, she called and asked me to sleep over. But she continued to ask me to come play over there. And during the day, I was fine. Nothing bad ever happened. Fast forward, we're now in first grade. Once again, I'm spending the night at her house, but I'm not the only one. There's another little girl. I figured if us both sleeping on the ground together, this man couldn't do anything. But something I like to tell parents is, and educators, everybody is, if they're doing it to one child and getting away with it, they're likely doing it to another child. And that's exactly what happened that night. And he abused all three of us, and none of us were talking about it. Well, this went on from 6, 7, 8. It went from just fondling to raping me when I was 7, telling me he'll come get me. I know where you live. Don't you tell anybody. No one was educating me besides stranger danger. Don't look for the lost puppy. Not the people I was spending the night in my best friend's home. So I stayed silent, began having all the behavior problems of a kid that was being abused. The school was addressing the behavior problems, but they weren't getting to why I was having these behavior problems. Labeling me behavior and emotionally disturbed child, repeating first grade. I mean, I went as far as putting my hand through a window,
Mm.
you know, in the ER, stitched up, everything, all because I was reliving a moment of this abuse that nobody knew about.
Wow.
So it wasn't someone educating me on personal body safety, on how to speak up and tell, that made me and have my abuse end. It was we moved. Still in the same town, new school. I never saw my best friend again. Well, moving just got me that much closer to the next perpetrator.
Mm.
Not the stranger that I've now learned about every year from the local cop who comes in and teaches us and shows us the same creepy video of the stranger trying to lure kids with candy or the lost puppy.
Right.
They show it every year to these kids. It was now spending the night at my grandparents' house in Wisconsin, their lake house, waking up to my older teenage cousin, who was like the brother I never got. All I have are sisters. Waking up to him sexually abusing me. It was like reliving everything over that happened when I was 6. Suddenly, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, but this time it's by someone I love and trust, and, trying to convince myself this didn't happen. I dreamt this all the next morning when I woke up.
Right.
But deep down, I knew. And when I went home, opened my little pink diary and wrote, something happened last night, but I don't know who to tell. And that abuse continued from 11, 12, 13, threatened the whole time. Our family would be destroyed. I had no proof he was doing this. So I just kept writing about it in my diary. Depressed, grades were dropping. Once again, all the red flags, but nobody knew why.
And this whole time, the first window and then the second window, you were internalizing all this, but not communicating it with any other
Nobody
adults.
else. I eventually told a best friend
Okay.
at my own overnight about what my cousin was doing, and I made her, Pinky promise me you won't tell anybody. My best friend from when I was 6, 7, and 8, she made me, Pinky promise not to tell anybody what he was doing because he had threatened her. So there was always this whole keep it a secret, and my best friend that I told about my cousin, she's only being told from me, don't tell anybody. No one's educating her.
Yep.
You don't keep these secrets. If a friend comes to you, if a family member comes to you and tells you this, you report this.
Yep.
So she kept it a secret with me. And the only reason my abuse ended, it was literally the same time that I am learning in 6th grade about DARE. I take my DARE card out to legislators and I pull it out and I say, you see this card? We use this across the country to teach kids the 8 ways to say no to drugs. And I flip the card over. But where are the 8 ways teaching kids on how to get away until today? I tell them, I go, I can stand here and tell you I've known much as put a cigarette in my mouth, tried marijuana, nothing, because I knew the consequences because I was educated.
Yep.
But when I was abused as a kid, my only education, and like millions of other children who are being abused, is from the perpetrator. I'll hurt you, your family, no one will believe you. These threats keep kids silent.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to educate children, and why I decided to turn something evil that I can't change into something positive to protect other kids from the horrors of what I endured.
Absolutely. And what was the timeline from, at what point in time did you, sort of report, right? And then at what point in time did you go from report to, sort of having this vision for Erin's Law and what it could be? And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure there's so much that goes into it, but like,
Yeah, so
yeah,
my abuse ended when I was 13. Whole investigation, a confession from the relative, but I wasn't disclosing what happened when I was 6, 7, and 8. I kept that to myself until my early 20s when I was in college. And it was in high school that I decided, after going down the path of suicide, self-harm, I was very self-destructive. I decided to confront that perpetrator cousin, forgive him, and decide to do something positive with this, and that was to put a face and voice on the silent epidemic of child abuse.
Mhm.
I took that diary that I kept a secret, hid under my mattress, and published it into a book my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And that's when things really took off of wanting to speak about this. And then when I got into college, it was when I was, around 21, 22, that I began to start writing legislators here in Illinois saying we need to teach kids personal body safety. In these letters I would write, we teach kids tornado drills, bus drills, fire drills every year in school to
Yep.
keep kids safe. We do internet safety, bully intervention, suicide prevention, the gun drills to protect kids from mass shooters. We do nothing when it comes to sexual abuse. We sweep it under the rug. Parents aren't talking about it.
Yep.
So I made it a mission to get it passed in Illinois. And after I was going to get it passed in Illinois, I told that legislator in that very first email in 2007, once I get it passed in here, I'm going after it in all 50 states. And that's what I did. I just went driven and, for the last 16 years have been traveling from one state capital after another. And what's really interesting is that first legislator I reached out to, he said, Erin, I agree. We need to talk to kids about this, but this will never pass. They will never talk about this in school with kids. And I'll never forget where I was sitting on the phone with him and I said, well, if you won't introduce it, I will find someone that will, because that's what needs to change. We are giving these sexual predators way too much power and control over children. And this cycle is just going to continue if we don't put a stop to it.
Yep.
And so found somebody and testified at the Capitol multiple times and eventually got it passed in Illinois. And that's when it took off. I quit my full-time master level job as a youth and family counselor and just have been traveling for the last 16 years from one state as far away as Arizona, to the state next door, testifying to lawmakers and now bringing them the proof all these years later, this works.
Yep.
And there's some states that pass it the very first, time, first session. There's other states, it's taken me 8 years, 9 years.
Yep.
But the thing is, legislators realize is I don't go away. I
Yep.
become their biggest nightmare. Eventually they get sick of me and pass it.
Well, I don't know if I would put it in those terms. Eventually they get wise enough to recognize
Yes.
it, I think, and
Yes.
we're gonna double click on all that. But just to bring everybody up to speed, since 2007, passed in Illinois.
Yeah.
Where is it at right now?
So in Illinois, it took 3 years, the first version of it in 2010 to get passed. And then another version mandating it was in 2013. So that was several year process, learning experience of what to do. And to date, now it is passed in 38 states. I'm going to be 40 in a year, and my goal is to have 40 states passing it by the time I'm 40. I've always said that. And so that is my vision. My mission is to get it done, like I said, in all 50 states. But it's really been what's helped me now over the years is I've got the ability to show these legislators in the other states this is working.
Yep.
The biggest example I now share with legislators is New York killed the bill for 8 years. And I kept coming back with phone calls, emails, and getting in front of them testifying and saying, one day I will bring you the proof of why this law was so important, why I didn't stop calling you and standing in front of you like I am now. Finally got it passed. And when I finally got it passed in 2019, it wasn't required till 2020. Very first year it's required. 9 kids in one elementary school in upstate New York came forward the very first time they heard this law, saying they're being abused. All 9 of these kids were pointing their finger at the same man. As I said, if they're getting away with doing it to one, they're probably doing it to multiple. And it wasn't stranger danger. It was the principal. A principal who was in this school for 15 years, and when it went to trial, 26 boys took the stand. All talked about being threatened, abused in his office, lunch with the principal, oh, and I'm going to molest you too. And he was sentenced to 63 years in prison. Wow. And that's the example I now bring and say, don't be like New York.
Yeah.
Don't spend 8 years because there's kids that went and testified that were toddlers when you could have passed this and would have never been harmed.
Yeah.
But no, you waited 8 years and now those 9, 10, 11-year-olds that were on the stand had to suffer and go through this when we could have prevented it.
Unbelievable. And okay, all right, so much to go through there, because you've done this before, but you articulated everything so well. Just to double click on a couple of items within within there, I want to talk about this idea of vision, right? And this being, some of what I think people can take away from this is certainly awareness and support of everything that you're doing, which I really, really hope is part of this, and I'm confident that it will. But the idea of this vision, right? Having a vision for your life or having a purpose for your life. I think that it's really unfortunate that sometimes people get a vision for their life and don't follow through on it, or they don't sustain through it, right? They don't, when it gets hard, it's just easy to bail, right? And in your example, like this is, I think, an extreme version of this, right? Where what you're trying to do is so big, right,
Mhm.
relative to what most people are going to encounter if they want to start a little business or something like that. But you have just like plowed through all of these barriers
Mhm.
for such a long time. Like, it had to be hard.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
You have a family, you have life outside of this, like all that kind of stuff. Like, what is it that like sustained you through that period of time? Um, and yeah, I'm just like curious, like, because it got hard.
Oh.
It would be easy
Oh
to
gosh, yeah.
bail, but
Oh
you haven't.
no. Um, you, my faith is a big part of why I pursued this. I literally heard God speak to me, telling me to go after this, telling me I would have my doubters,
Yep.
but that would be successful in getting it passed in all 50 states. And it's been that driving force that I'm reminded of every time experience the resistance, the ignored phone calls and emails, um, that I continue to, see myself what has gone on in these other states and how sometimes it just takes finding that's what's great about having new elected officials. It's always changing, every couple years you're getting somebody new in, and with 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys being sexually abused by the age of 18, I can't tell you how many times I've reached out to that new legislator that says, Erin, if your law existed when I was a kid, I would have spoken up.
Yeah.
But I was threatened just like you. And they get up there and testify as they're standing next to me introducing the bill. And I have not allowed having kids slow me down. I've just made a commitment to this, so I take them with me. As infants, I mean, I got videos of me testifying to Ohio legislators with a sleeping 3-month-old on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Took my daughter, the first one, to state capitals, but every single one of my kids, all 4 of them, I've brought into state capitals, either laying on me, sitting in a stroller next to me as I testify, or the legislators' aides holding them while I get up there, because people often ask me, why are you so passionate and driven, and why don't you give up? And the best answer I can give people is, I know what abuse does to you.
Yeah.
Just because you break your silence and speak up, it stays with you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It is something that could, you relive it. Everything is perfectly fine, and then something happens, and someone walks in that looks like your perpetrator, and you're reliving that moment all over again.
Yeah.
Being this paranoid parent, I don't want to be this overbearing, protective, keep my kids in a bubble, but because of what happened to me, I won't let my kids go to sleepovers. I am very, very careful who I allow to watch my children. And, most parents that have never experienced this don't even think twice about that.
Yeah.
So I see the long-term effects in so many areas of my life, from trust issues of dating men. I thought I was never going to get married because every man I dated, I feared, because of being hurt so many times by men, that they were all somehow had the same drive and were going to show me the same evil I saw
Yeah.
as a young child. And so that is really a huge driving force for me, is I know there's kids out there that I can save from years of abuse, and hopefully put a stop at it during the grooming process when it first initially happens, getting them to speak up, rather than them experience 6 years of being sexually abused.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to just save kids from enduring what you experience the rest of your life, because it doesn't go away. It stays with you.
Yeah. Amazing. And um, yeah, but I will say it again, but before I move on, and thank you for your dedication to that. We're going to click on that even further, a little bit further. But second part that I wanted to click on, you mentioned the politics
Hmm.
aspect. And I've known you now loosely, I guess, for 10-ish years.
Yeah.
And I've never asked you, but I was always curious about this.
Hmm.
Because to me, it seems like this is a no-brainer,
Yes.
right? Like,
I hear that a lot.
it seems like so, not simple, but like as a politician,
Mhm.
if this was introduced, I would, like, who is not going to
Who's
support
not
it?
going to support
It actually
protecting
looks,
kids?
it actually brings more questions about if you're not supporting it
Yes.
than if you are. And I mean, but I know it's been a grind, like you said.
Mhm.
you gotten it approved in 38 states. You've introduced in 12 more.
Yeah.
But like, what are the resistance points that, you've had to, I know it's not like snap a finger and
Yeah.
it's in there and there's dollars attached to it and things like that.
That's
But
a
like,
big one.
okay.
I get told a lot this is an unfunded mandate. How are schools going to have the funds to teach this? And I have, in early days, it was very hard to get past that, and the bill died a lot because of it being an unfunded mandate.
Okay.
And that was a reason why it died in a lot of states. I eventually found a U.S. legislator in Senator Gillibrand in New York who introduced the federal version of Erin's Law. In December of 2015, President Obama signed it, and it allowed federal funding dollars that schools could access through the State Board of Education in their state to say, I want to use this $2,000 to purchase curriculum to teach Erin's Law. So that helped get it through some other states. Then some states were coming to me, like Arizona, which still hasn't passed it. Erin, yeah, we were given, $16 million, but that money was also going towards the DARE program, the internet safety. It's not just Erin's Law, and we used up all that money, so there's no money to teach Erin's Law. So now I am currently really trying to solve that issue, so there's not that barrier, and I've created my own Erin's Law Foundation, and literally in the process right now of creating the curriculum. It's going to be evidence-based, teaching kids, from kindergarten, the first version is till 6th grade on this, at no cost for schools.
Mm.
Giving them, because there's a lot of this curriculum, it's out there and it's great, but they charge schools $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. And they say, I don't have this, so if I have the ability to, here you go, here's the curriculum, it's going to come at no cost, you can't use the excuse, this is an unfunded mandate. The other issue is people see this as, and I have to try to explain this to them, this is not that, this is sex ed. You're teaching our kindergartners
Right.
sex ed, the birds and the bees, abortion, choose your own gender, and there's this, especially in these red states, it's almost all red states left. There's this fear that this is, Planned Parenthood coming in and teaching kids about, sex and abortion and all that. And I have to sit there and explain to legislators, you need to write it saying personal body safety education in the bill. Take the word sex out because people see that. Parents, principals, whatever, see that and they freak out because of that word.
Got it.
And so I have to get up there and explain to them when legislators come to me and haven't researched the bill enough and tell them, these kids are too young to learn this. No, they're not. This is teaching kids about their bodies, and their bodies belong to them, and nobody touches them there, and they can speak up and tell if this is happening. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so that is another big issue I run into, is this whole confusion of this is sex education. It's not.
Yep.
I'm literally trying to protect kids from predators.
Yep.
And I've seen some pretty incredible stories of, even in my own state of Illinois, the one legislator that was retiring, she'd been a legislator for like 20 years, says no to every unfunded mandate. Very outspoken about it. And I was warned she's going to be resistant and she's going to butt heads with you, Erin. And as I sat there to testify, I'm thinking, what could I say to speak to this legislator to change her mind, to vote for the first time for an unfunded mandate? So it was my whole sole focus. I made it my goal. She got on her microphone and started crying and said, if Erin's Law existed when I was a kid, I would have spoken up and told. But like Erin, I was threatened, I stayed silent, and was abused for years. Said, I want every single one of you to vote yes. The newspapers were interviewing her. First unfunded mandate that she supported because she could relate. She saw the importance of it.
Right.
But for the legislator that sponsored it, he had no idea because there's so much shame around this issue. Survivors stay quiet. Some don't disclose until their 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
And it gave her the courage to come forward and finally speak about this.
Yeah. Well, in my own personal experience with it, like I remember, first hearing your story before I had children in school.
Okay.
Right. And then I had children in school and they sent home the letter to parents saying, hey, just heads up, we're going to be teaching about this, whatever. But even as I read it, and it's been a few years, so I don't know exactly what it would have communicated, but I remember them talking about kind of safe touch zones.
Yeah.
I remember them saying stuff about, I feel like they call it the swimsuit zone.
Less, yeah, yep.
So, and I'm like, that's perfect. That's
Yes.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see to where you're, especially with just people conflating the ideas.
Well, and to go off of that,
Yeah.
another powerful story is schools send home that letter, the Aaron's Law letter. This is what we're going to be teaching. I see them throughout the country.
Yep.
People coming and saying, look at the letter I just got. And one mother reached out to me saying she got the letter. She called the principal, said, what is being taught? I want to see this curriculum. And I tell people, educators, give it to them. Explain what is being taught.
Yeah.
She goes, I never got to see it, Erin, but I, unlike a lot of parents, I've talked to my daughter about this. She was 7. She goes, so I was concerned of what was actually going to be taught. And it's going to go beyond, teaching my kids something I don't want them learning. Is this
Right.
going beyond personal body safety?
Right.
So she said, even after talking to the principal, still in her gut, she did not feel comfortable with her daughter learning this. And she said it was the day before her daughter was taught this, that she almost signed that slip that was going to have her daughter sit in the library while every other, classmate of hers, that parent allowed, and she said it made her feel bad that, like, oh, is there going to be a mark on me, a red flag? Oh, she's not letting her children sit through this. Should we be looking at the parents? Are they trying to hide something? She goes, what I didn't know, Erin, and I want you to use my story as an example as you travel and talk to other parents, is the one kid that would disclose they were being sexually abused in my daughter's school was my daughter.
Yeah.
She goes, here I had talked to my daughter about this, but she had been threatened by my father, her grandpa, that he would kill her if she told, kill mom. So it took somebody in the school teaching this to give that kid the courage to finally speak up.
Yep.
And I just remember sitting there reading this going, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so I use that story to tell parents, don't be that mom that almost signed that paper, not letting her kid get this lesson.
Yeah. Well, and that all feeds into sort of like the third thing I wanted to click on is like, I think everybody wants to feel like they've left an impact on the world and left a legacy. Like, I know it sounds like a little bit of a, you're too humble to, really sort of embrace it probably for what what I'm trying to communicate. But have you thought about the order of magnitude of the impact that you've already had, right, on so many lives, right? And how do you see yourself, in that story for like the long term, right?
Yeah.
Like I think about it and I think about, okay, we're not only talking about, victims and putting perpetrators, behind bars and where they belong, right? Like there's so many of those stories, and you've alluded to several of them. But think about how many things were avoided,
Yeah.
right, as a product of this, and think about the order of magnitude of really nothing happened. However, people's sense of like control and positivity over their body, and this is my body. Like I have 4 children
Yeah.
that have all gone through this, and I'm one of millions and millions of people in this country that haven't had a terrible thing happen, but I'm so grateful
Yeah.
that my kids have had an opportunity to learn about this and say, like, look, this is my body, this is my personal space, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I hope you hear this. Like, it's enormous, the work that you've done. And how do you, like, I don't know, do you think about that? Like, do you think about all the, like, the people like me and my kids, and like just how grateful? I mean, it's enormous what you've done. I mean, it's just,
It's funny you say that because, and I see the impact because I hear from parents, survivors, um, you know, legislators. But the one thing that I have a hard time with going after this law is I've gotten recognized a lot in awards, on stages, People Magazine named me one of 15 women changing the world, along with Oprah and Hillary Clinton in
Yeah.
that camp. I was named Glamour magazine 10 years ago, Woman of the Year.
Yeah.
And I didn't do this for recognition.
Right.
And it sounds, but it gets me really uncomfortable when
Yeah.
I'm being handed these plaques and like I said, I don't do this to be put on a pedestal of, oh my gosh, look at this amazing work you've done. Because, I didn't do this on my own. It's taken a team. It's taken legislators. It's taken, the very first person here in Illinois that helped me and listened to me was the chief of police in Dixon, Illinois, in a little small town, Ronald Reagan small town, where he grew up. The chief of police heard me and said, I want to introduce you to our state senator and get this going. So I couldn't do this on my own. And yet, so often, I get all this recognition, get all these awards when it takes the legislators to come alongside me. It takes these reporters to hear me and not ignore this. For the longest time, the media doesn't want to talk about this. This is uncomfortable.
Yep.
We don't want to put this on the air, Erin. We don't want to write a story about this. And the legislators that, the reporters that help me get this story out there. Because one thing I've learned throughout this whole process, it's a learning curve, is legislators hate negative media, negative, media attention where they're showing they're not protecting kids, they're not doing the right thing. And so when you go to the media and get them to do a story saying, these 35 states have passed this, why hasn't Arizona, Hawaii, Nebraska passed it? It kind of making these legislators not look too good.
Yeah.
So I've learned the angles of what I need to do to get this passed. But like I said, it's not for the recognition. It's for, knowing the impact of the lives it's going to save. And I guess I can't tell you how many times you get discouraged, especially the longer I go along this and the
Yep.
more resistance. It's so easy to just want to just walk away and give up, but I refuse to do that because I'm constantly reminded of suddenly there's another news story, and I got one last night. Story to me of a kid here in Illinois. Right there in the article, the child didn't even know what was happening to her was wrong and how to speak up about it until the Erin's Law Assembly. And she came and disclosed, and this was going on for years. This family member is now behind bars being prosecuted. And I'm looking at that going, and this is why I keep doing it.
Yep.
It's for these kids.
Yeah.
These kids that we put an end to their horror and hopefully prevent this man from going on and doing it to other people.
Yeah. So 38 states. You want to get 2 more by the time you're 40.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully a short window to 50 from there.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't want to be 50, waking up at 50 getting it passed.
And just in case somebody's tuning in that's like, hey, I've got influence, is this passed in my state?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. Is that something they could look at your website?
Yeah, I tell them to reach out to me at, my website, aaronslaw.org, my Erin's Law Foundation Facebook page, and reach out and say, how can I help? And that's where you can find the 12 states that have not passed it.
Yeah.
But how can I help get this passed in my state?
Yeah.
That's what I try to really, because like I said, they need to hear from the people in their state.
Yep.
Not just some girl from Chicago.
Yep.
They need to hear other people's survivor stories of, had this existed, this would have helped me.
Yep.
And so that's something I really try to tell people to do in their state.
All right, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
But until then, know and hear, I, for one, have one of many, many, many people grateful for all the work that you've done. And like I said, it's not thousands, it's not tens of thousands, it's literally millions of people that have benefited from this. So I just want to say, job well done.
Thank you.
And you have certainly my support going forward. And I know, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Is. And do you know what's going to happen after all 50 states pass it? It's going international.
All right.
I've got it in Kerala, India now, and I've a legislator in Ontario, Canada, heard me speak over 10 years ago, and he said if he ever became a legislator, he would introduce this bill, and he's now a legislator, and he says, Erin, we're so close to getting it passed, and I see no issues. So I'm pretty sure the next place I will be announcing that has passed this law is Ontario, Canada.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Well, very, very good. And I really appreciate your time and coming in to speak about this. I think it's really important. to spread this message any way that I can certainly be of influence to it. But I also think that it's important for people to hear, like, hey, if you're in on something, you're in on something.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And you got to go after it, and it's never going to be easy, and nothing's going to be handed to you. And there's going to be times where you got to get yourself back up after you've fallen down. There's going to be people that are telling you're stupid, or you're not going to have enough money to do it, or any number of things, and you just got to grind through it.
The one thing I always tell, I speak to a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers, and you know what I tell all of them? I stand on that stage and said, I was told in front of my entire math class and algebra in high school by the teacher asking me, do you plan to go to college, Erin? And I said, yes. She goes, you need to rethink your plans. You'll never get accepted into college if you can't do algebra. 6 months later, I get my ACT scores. My guidance counselor is saying the same thing. Erin, you're not going to get accepted into college. In fact, I don't think you'll do good in a community college. And I looked at her and said, sign my pass. You've known for the last 3 years that I want to go off and get my degree in social work. I said, I'm going to college, and one day I will prove you wrong. Never sat in that woman's office again. And 5 years out of high school, I had my master's degree in social work because I didn't listen to the naysayers. And that's what I tell kids. I don't care. As long as you believe in yourself, there is a clear path to success as long as you don't give up. That's what I'm doing.
Wonderful. All right. Well, on the podcast, something that I like to do is have final 3 questions.
Okay.
These are just kind of light. We've changed them. It's season 1, season 2. This is season 2, so they're slightly different.
Okay.
But before we go on to those, I did want to ask a 4th question, and it's not really a question, but tell me about this famous cat that you have. Because I had a member of our team ask about the cat specifically. So tell me about that, and how did that happen?
So I have this cat, which my kids named Carrot. We got her as a kitten, adopting her.
Okay.
And I posted, videos of the cat. Actually, it was our former cat I posted videos, and then started posting videos of this one. And a video went viral. And as a result of it going viral, the social media page went from 2,000 to 50,000, which is now at 331,000 followers.
Oh my gosh.
And people often ask me, I like to tell people there's a lot of crazy cat people in this world, as you see. But I like to tell people, I feel like it's pretty cool to have this influencer page unrelated to the work that I'm doing, because it gives me another platform to reach a whole other audience that knows nothing about my law, that I am sharing there with all the cat followers who are writing to me going, Erin, I know a legislator. I know this. I know, I can help connect you to these people in my state to help get this passed. I mean, former Vice President or First Lady Laura Bush follows the cat.
Wow.
Ellen follows the cat. It's crazy. There's a lot of cat people in this world, but yeah, it's just a growing site that is, and it's fun to have something fun on the side to do to balance the stress of going after this law.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, but it's amazing just the magnitude. I've heard about it, and I do probably through your social channels or whatever that I've seen you posting on, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. So Carrie Brondike, that was a shout out for you from my team. Anyway, love it. All right, last 3 questions, and you can modify this if you'd like to, but top 3 rock and roll bands of all time. If you're into rock and roll, it's fine. Some people have asked for like movies or whatever.
Well, there's the Beatles.
All right.
My daughter loves the song Abbey Road because her name's Abby.
Okay.
Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
Pink Floyd.
All right.
Yeah, those are,
classics
from my dad's time.
Yeah.
Those are the best though.
Yeah.
Nothing now like there was back then.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. I wasn't sure, you're a little bit younger than me.
No,
so
I listen. My dad always had that kind of stuff on.
All right. Perfect. Which annual holiday is the best one? And you would be amazed at the dispersion of responses I get to this one, but.
Well, is Groundhog's Day a holiday? Because that's my birthday. I'm just kidding.
Well,
And in the movie, it
okay.
repeats every day.
Yeah.
No,
Well, no, that could be a good one.
yeah, that would be a good day to repeat, as
Yeah.
long as he doesn't see his shadow.
Yeah.
Especially when you live in Chicago, you don't want 6 more weeks of winter.
But who wouldn't want their birthday every day?
Every day, I know, right? I'm all about Christmas.
Yeah.
And, as a kid it was great, but now as a parent, to just see the joy and excitement of my kids and getting to experience them Christmas morning, waking up, there's just something about that I just love.
Yep. I know the feeling, so I get it. All right. Well, if you weren't doing your current work, completely unrelated career that you can see yourself enjoying and thriving in. I know you mentioned your degrees in social work or whatever, maybe that's part of it, but anything come to mind?
Something I always said, if I wasn't doing this, I'd want to be a journalist,
Okay.
like TV talk show host.
Okay.
I would love to, and not use it as a platform to, have all your Taylor Swifts on there, your actresses, like some show hosts do. I would want to do it in the sense of giving people a platform to tell their stories,
Okay.
overcoming obstacles. I'm not just talking abuse. I'm talking cancer. I'm talking, all sorts of things, of giving people that platform, to put a voice to something that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the thing that was taken from me in my life was my voice, and it's the thing that I've reclaimed. And I would love for other people to have the ability to put a face and voice on something in their life that they've persevered,
Yep.
overcome.
Yeah, that's ironically a different derivative of kind of why I started the podcast, right?
Okay.
Because I love entrepreneurship. I love small organizations. I love story, and I was just a big fan of, like, on the business side, podcasts like How I Built This. But then, there's a guy named Sam Jones that has one called Off Camera with Sam Jones.
Okay.
And he's sort of interviews mostly like celebrity types in LA, but it's like long form conversation
Okay.
kind of thing. And on the business side, I always just felt like, there's so many real authentic stories that are with people that don't have businesses where they've, made $1 billion,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of dollars. These are people on the street doing it real time right now, trying to sort of like get ahead, you know what I mean? And those conversations were always so interesting to me, and what I naturally did, and that's what kind of eventually turned me into, the business that I started with Third Road, because I was just like curious, got inspired by people, wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And I think what you were talking about there, is sort of the same idea of having that platform
Yeah.
for other people. Well, hopefully somebody's listening that maybe can give you that platform
Yeah.
one day. You never know.
No,
Anything's possible, right?
I did have a producer when I was on a talk show come up to me 10 years ago and said, Erin, you can be doing your own talk show in Chicago. Call us when you're ready.
Okay.
And you know what? I was kind of in awe of it, but I'm at a point in my life where obviously what I'm doing, I'm very, passionate about, but also I saw what that did to Oprah. She never had kids. I
Yeah.
saw how time consuming that was. And the very first most important job out of anything for me is raising my kids, is
Yeah.
being there. It, as you know, as a parent, it goes so fast. You blink and suddenly they're in kindergarten, suddenly or they're middle school.
Yep.
And being able to do this, but also be home with them and not miss all those milestones, not
Yep.
miss all those events. And I feel like a job like that is so time consuming and stressful. My number one thing I've wanted in life more than anything is to be a mom, and now I'm blessed with 4 little ones.
Love it. Love it. Well, Erin Merryn, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you have done, are doing, and will continue to do.
Thank you for helping me put a face and voice on this to reach more people.
All right, you bet. Thank you.